Hello and welcome to another episode of my podcast. I'm Vanessa, your host, and I'm here to bring you meaningful conversations with leaders and influencers on data, AI, innovation, and leadership. With me today, I have Petra Ålund. She is currently the CHRO, Chief Human Resource Officer at SEB. And before that, for 5 years, she was the Chief Technical Officer. Let's ask her what else she has been up to, right? Welcome again, all of you. Welcome, Petra. It's so wonderful to have you here on this beautiful November rainy day. I love the rains, you know.
No, and it's great to be here. Classic Swedish autumn day.
Yes.
So
yes.
This will be the highlight of the day.
I'm glad. But tell us a little more about yourself.
I started out like many of us as a trainee. You didn't have a clue what to do. And I started with Scania, heavy trucks. Yeah. And I think you were lucky. Starting in a large corporation and you don't know what to do. You get the possibility to try everything from product engineering to purchasing. And I think that's a great place to start if you really don't know. And then I got a chance to work on another company starting with Sandvik, also fantastic global company with a long heritage. And then my last 8 years, I switched vertical, still within engineering, but I went to a bank, SEB.
SEB, another S.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also how little I did understand how the technology will be in a bank versus to the industry. So I also see that, it was a great opportunity to go to another vertical to see how you can still use your skills.
Petra, you have been SEB CTO for 5 years before stepping into the CHRO role. A rare move, from tech to people. How has that tech background influenced the way you think about AI and the balance between people and machines?
And I think the question you say, this rare step.
Yeah.
I think somehow it's kind of natural because I think the timing is so good because I was trying to drive the tech agenda on AI for the whole of the bank together with all my colleagues being the CTO. And now I see the inflection that this tech that is coming now going to be so broad. Before, all the generations has never been that broad. Yeah. Now everybody need to do it. And I thought if it's something I learned during my years is how do you embrace change and wanting to try new stuff. And I thought, could I help out with that in my CHRO role? How could you get everyone to be as leaning forward as normally as a tech person is? Because as a tech person, you have it in your DNA. You want to rationalize, you want to optimize. So I thought that background could help a lot in the role of CHRO, that, now we all need to lean forward to embrace the technology.
Yeah. And I think that message then would be so easy for you to deliver from a tech perspective to the people, having had that role for so long. So really very, very nice and super inspiring. But how do you think that the future would look like for HR leaders? Do you believe they would need a stronger tech background? Or is it more kind of a strong collaboration, partnership with the other team players?
I think, of course, there are many different aspects depending what you have learned in life. But I think you can say one thing. What we have done recently within the bank, we have looked on what should a talent know. Yeah. Future talent in general. In the bank, you should deliver. You should transform. But we have also added that you should embrace technology. Of course, that maybe not everybody would have thought of. Yeah. So I think, if you're a CHRO not having worked with tech at all, work with your tech colleagues. Try to understand because they will be in the forefront. They will most likely have been the ones trying it out the earliest. They will tell you which are the roles disappearing, what are the worries, and you will see that happening in more parts of your organization. So I would really try to benchmark your R&D or tech setup first to see how can we utilize that learning in all other parts of the bank, or the bank or your company. Yeah. Mm.
I think when we're talking about this CHRO and CTO role, because there are other companies like Moderna who have combined this role because they argue that the people and technology, have to go hand in hand. To some extent, it's largely what you are also saying. But how do you see this model working? Could it work? I mean, clearly somewhere it is for you in your HR because you've come with that background. But what do you believe are the prerequisites for success?
I think everybody read a lot about Moderna in Forbes and everywhere because it's an interesting move. But my bet, without knowing the person, probably she could do other tasks as well. So I think that is, of course, a background. You have a strong leader, you can take other things. And then what is to run tech? If I read on Moderna, they have a large R&D organization, and then they have an IT part where you have a lot of supporting functions. That is now becoming closer with HR. In SEB, our R&D and tech is the same. So I think it's also very, very different when you say that you do the tech. So I think it's a lot easier to see we do the internal processes that IT is supporting versus that the head of HR for Moderna would also run the R&D department. There, I think most likely you still want somebody understanding R&D.
Understood.
That is at least my bet.
Yeah. But do you think that combining these roles would accelerate the innovation?
I think understanding more perspective is really good because, like I said, in her case, when you have those parts, you have the internal tech, you could say. You understand the processes, you will understand the impact on the people. If you are driving straight through processing in many areas, you will understand here we don't need those kind of skills. What do I need to forward? So I think it's a very, very good combination. But I also am quite sure that, if you have able people, they will be able to combine different roles.
Yeah. But do you see any skill sets or mindsets that are non-negotiable for, having roles like these?
I mean, you need to be eager to learn.
Yeah.
You need to be eager to learn. And I mean, she had a background working with HR for a long time. Of course, you need to spend a lot of time understanding what is challenging in tech. Yeah. And I think that's very natural when you take an add-on to your role and you are very, you know the trade you had before. You need to spend the most of the time learning the new ones.
Yes.
And if you're, curious and want to learn, I don't think that's a problem.
No.
And she probably knows, being in Moderna for a while, which are the processes not working, how could we challenge that, where do we need to do things differently. So I'm quite sure that she could steer and guide and then understand the people implications while changing.
You recently had a seminar about algorithmic modernity, which is, that AI isn't just about efficiency, it's about trust and identity. What does that mean for how we work and how we lead in the workplace?
I've read a lot in this area, and you see, large part of me is so positive. I've always been positive about technology, but I also see the algorithms. There is a drawback. Yeah. There is very easy to get nervous or worried. And I think we need to be aware about that. I mean, being monitored, what you do in social media, we can see how that, especially on teens, but also on grown-ups, you want to have likes, you want to be looked upon. Yeah. Yes. That's not only positive effects on you. You can see large companies or tech companies monitoring their staff in a way that I would say it's super old-fashioned. Yeah. Maybe not gaining trust from a leadership perspective at all, because it's so easy to monitor. Yes. And I think we also need to challenge and refrain from monitor everything, because I think you will see people getting nervous and sometimes also using tools that we don't know what is this data going to be used for. So I think being aware in how this can be perceived is going to be really, really important, not to get people get worried.
Yeah, I think that is so true. And it's never a good feeling to know that you are being watched or monitored, in that way, because it doesn't bring out the best in anybody. But what cultural or ethical guardrails then do you think need to be in place so that employees still feel empowered and not controlled by AI-driven decisions?
I think you need to be able to be transparent. If you take my new area, for instance, HR, recruitment, there are lots of debates in media today. How is the recruitment being done? Is it just a black box? Before, you can say it was kind of a black box, but it was a person deciding which resumes would I read or not read. But now, you are using AI. Is it really diversity neutral or not? So I think you need to be able to explain. And if you're not having a correct model, you need to be able to explain. So I think a lot of the tooling you need to explain or to say, here we are not sure if it's 100% sure the results. Hence we have a human in the loop, looking on all the parts. I think being very transparent in what we are doing, and also I think also being transparent, what will we do with your data? I recently, we changed house and you buy electricity, and then I changed the vendor of electricity. But then suddenly the old one starts calling me, and I said, I canceled my agreement. How come you have my number? Yeah, we kind of keep all the data, and then I realized, how do you build trust? So I think also in being able to tell your clients and employees, how do I treat the data? Could I opt out when I quit, or you're still gonna have all my flaws and all my figures. So I think it's going to be a lot about transparency and how we treat the data.
Yeah, absolutely. It just reminds me of we were doing once mergers and acquisitions, and we were looking at buying a company way back when, and when we were looking at the data, and the owner of the company was so proud, and he said, I have all the data. I have saved everything. And I go like, ooh, that is not good. Identified risk, yes. So I think it's also people knowing what is right and not that you can't. I mean, he believed he was right.
No, of course he didn't have any bad intent. But I think in creating trust and not being nervous is that you understand. And I think in the beginning, a lot of us just opt in on everything, and we didn't understand how the data is going to be used.
Yes, what a journey we've all come on. But you said AI will not make HR less human. It will do the opposite. To a large extent, actually, I agree with you. Can you share a concrete example how automation freed up HR to be more human?
I think CHRO within our bank, we have worked for quite a long time, just like we do in tech, shift left. What is a repetitive question? Most of they call, I forgot how many holidays I have left, how many days is it? They still have the pay slip, but they forget. Or maybe you want to double check. Okay, let's do, we have used, those days it wasn't agentic AI, but an internal AI bot we had had for quite some years, even though it wasn't as good as it is nowadays. But there you can ask the question, and the feeling is it's actually HR answering this. We saw another question coming very often is, in Sweden you need to show a piece of paper that you're actually earning money and being employed if you want to take a mortgage. And before that has been a lot of different tasks for HR to do that. And we saw this is a repetitive question. Let's just build a straight-through processing that we gather all the data and the employee can pull out the form, him or herself. And of course, that time that we gain, we can take a much more complex question. So we try to monitor how many more tasks can we do, very much how we have done in the tech space. Try to shift left and see repetitive questions but of course, it's not everybody saying this is perfect, because a lot of people say, I prefer to call you. We still get a question, I really would like to call how many days I have. Yeah, but I can't say that we actually spend that cost for you to having a person to speak with. You will have to do it online, but there is a resistance. I think one should be aware of that. And
that's interesting. Because I think, I'm just thinking out loud that shouldn't be, I mean, if you're just wanting to know how many days.
Yeah. But I think, old habits. We like to call someone, and maybe we know each other, we meet for lunch as well, and now we close the support, you can't call, because you need to chat with our bot. And then if you have a complex question, of course you're allowed to call, but for the 80%, but there's still people that I really would like. No, and I think that's a change of behavior. It takes time.
Absolutely, but it sounds like you guys are having fun.
Absolutely, we are.
Yeah. And during a visit to London, a colleague said to you, please don't take away the possibility to talk with a real person. How do you decide what should be automated versus where human contact is non-negotiable?
Yeah, and I think a little bit like the examples we discussed, it's actually no value add.
No.
And having the time, if you have a manager we have a feeling of a non-inclusion in the team. How do we treat that? Somebody's feeling I'm harassed in the team. I think there are so many people-related questions that you just want to bounce with somebody else that has done it before.
Yeah.
How could I tackle this question to make it better? And I think that will take, I'm not sure I will be able to see that the AI will solve that, because I think you need to see the emotions, you need to feel it, you need to see the individuals, how are the different behaviors. You can't just calculate to say this is the right answer.
Yeah, but that makes so much sense, right? Because you also talk, AI, we talk about AI taking the task that is repetitive, but also where the human, the empathy and compassion and all that is, the human will always still be involved.
Absolutely. So. And I also saw some other examples. I recently visited ABB and spoke with somebody in their robotics division. And he said, it's kind of interesting, if you take an area where they didn't have robots before, they don't end up with less staff. They would end up with equal amount or maybe more, but different kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because of course you're going to produce more and you have a lot of different opportunities. I also think that you need to see it from that angle. What can you do differently when you have changed the old ways of working?
Yeah, and I really want to, let's talk again about that, because I think there's so much fear about people losing jobs. There's a lot of people that have lost their jobs, and they put it down to AI taking your jobs. But I like what you say, because there will be more jobs. There will be either different kind of jobs, but there will be jobs available. So it's maybe we're seeing a dip just now, but I think it's just companies finding their bearings. What could we do? What can we do?
Because you all want, at least most companies want to grow.
Yes.
You want to sell more, you want to do it differently, or you want to go to other countries, or you find another line of service you didn't have before. So I think, it's just as a starting point.
Yeah, and people will be involved, because not all aspects AI can take.
Absolutely, that's for sure.
Yes. Thank you.
I've always been positive. It was the same when you worked in production shops. When the first robots came, of course, it wasn't the same person that were programming. I was one of the young ones to say, of course, I can, try to rewrite the code for the machine. So of course, it's another skill, but you still needed somebody to look upon it. But it was a different skill set than it was before.
Yeah. You described managers as the first line of HR. How do you see leaders making sure AI actually supports and not replaces? So I think we've talked about it, but real human connection at work. I think it's like going to the example that you shared, right? Where if it is something really empathy and compassion that needs.
I think one angle is, of course, we discuss a lot what is a good manager or what is a good leader. And then I always say, if you meet a senior manager, I say, what good looks like. Because which manager are doing the people aspect, are making people to grow, to thrive, are taking other opportunities within your company and are delivering. Yeah. And the ones that they focus only on the people aspect and are not delivering. And the ones that just do the delivering and don't develop their staff. So at least when we have conversations, I said, you just look around you and say, which are the good ones? They are doing both sides. They are both developing their staff and they are delivering. And I think these are the managers we should nurture and have as our role models. The other ones we need to help to say, you need to like both parts of the job. Yeah. Otherwise, you need to pick another job.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes, but
it's hard because you see that sometimes some are super happy about the people side and they want to stay with that. But it's very few manager role that you don't need to produce an output.
Of course, yes, agree. You had an interview with Dagens Industri, and you mentioned one of your proudest moments. I love this. Was teaching your 80-plus-year-old parents how to use AI tools. It makes AI feel accessible to everyone. How do we make sure this transformation doesn't leave anyone behind? I think especially now, there's a fear of ageism, and digital divides are real challenges that are happening.
I think we can just bring forward different role models and showcase it's not about age. We had one a couple of years ago when the tooling were coming for generative AI in tech. There was one guy around 60 plus, and he had a competition with his son, 25, also in software development. And the son felt, I'm going to beat you, Dad, because, this is my home turf. Of course the dad won. Because he had been running software development all his life, and he was also devoting his time for learning the new tooling. So I think also sharing those examples, and it will take time. I remember when our son was young, he was pretty good in hockey, and then at school they said, you need to play the guitar now, and to get extra credits you also need to sing. And he came home, and it was really horrible. And he said, I can't do it. And I said, how many hockey pucks do you shoot per day? Give it a try, and he did it flawlessly. He will never be a great guitar player. I'm not saying that, or maybe he will be, but I mean, he did perfection it, but it took time. So for me, it's not about being young or being old. You will need time, and I think we as an employer, we can do more also in peer learning together. Having the one being a lot older have a lot of stuff and having the one that recently graduated for the year. So I think it will come more of these discussions of co-learning. How do we learn together and being smarter together? And hopefully we will not debate about the age.
No.
Because we all need time to learn.
Yeah. I like that. I think we cannot, especially if Sweden is extending the retirement age,
yes.
we need to be doing something.
We will. And it will not be fun if we don't keep on learning, that's for sure.
Absolutely, true that. Do you think AI could bridge generations at work, bringing younger and older colleagues together through, I think your example was very nice, because it should be like that, right?
No, I think I saw examples in my previous job as head of tech. We had one that had just done his master at KTH, and he was absolutely the best in knowing which models to use for what, and to make sure we have a flawless operations in the bank. But of course, his knowledge, knowing all the data models to put in production, but also with the guys and girls that has lived and run with the daily operations together, just mixing that together, you can't beat that. No. You can't beat that, because sometimes you can't figure it out or calculate it. Somebody would say, this will actually go down, if things looks like this or not, but you can't really explain it. And sometimes he would say, now we have this fantastic new model, let's try it. And I also like that sometimes when you get the combination of the older wise ones and the young ones, not knowing it's impossible. Because we will also together with having that mindset, make the impossible work.
True. So there's a lot to gain from shared learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And also I think, from age, because when you haven't done everything, you're also normally a lot more optimistic.
Yes, indeed. If you had to pick one, AI in the workplace, or is that more of a fear, an opportunity, or a mirror that shows us what really matters about being human?
Now, for me, it can never be about fear. I'm so positive about all technology. No, but I think also one need to be cautious. It can be used in the wrong way, and be aware about that and speak about it, address it. If we see it's being used in the wrong way, speak about it clearly, candidly, and challenge it. Yeah. And then I think we will really thrive. But it could be also used in the wrong way.
Thank you. But I see that you have a book here. Is there something you want to talk about?
No, I thought, if you give me really tricky questions, I go back and read. But this was, I had the chance to speak with Anthony Elliott some time ago. And then I read his last book, Algorithm of Anxiety. And I think it's really good. The more you understand what is happening from a societal perspective, the easier it will also be to do your job. So for me, it was a great read.
Then we know. We're going to bring that and read it. Thank you. And lastly, how's it going with Mum and Dad and AI?
It's good. It's good, and I think they are evolving. And I ask, what kind of advice did you do or not do? And of course, my mom loves doing it with voice. That is still more texting, so that's also good to see that.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you so much, Petra. It's been so wonderful to have you on the show with me, and thank you everyone for joining in and listening to us. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, and if you have time, please leave us a comment. We'd always like to hear from you. Feedback is always welcome. Thanks for now. Bye.